My name is Cassidy Vale. I'm 35 years old. And 2 months before, what was supposed to be my second wedding, I sat across from my fiancé in a glass-walled conference room and watched him turn my worst heartbreak into a legal warning label. Ethan looked calm when he said it. My assets stay separate, he told me, tapping one finger against the prenup like it was a menu choice. Your last divorce says enough about your judgment. His lawyer lowered his eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the words, not even Ethan's tone. The lawyer's eyes. He looked down, because even he knew Ethan had gone too far. I should have stood up then. I should have taken my purse, walked out, and let the wedding planner explain to 200 guests why the bride had disappeared before the invitations were mailed. Instead, I picked up the pen, I signed the page, then I smiled faintly and said, "Smart." Ethan exhaled, like he had won something. He had no idea what he had just lost. 3 years earlier, my first marriage ended in the kind of slow, ugly way that leaves fingerprints on every part of your life. My ex-husband cheated. I found out by accident, filed for divorce, and spent the next 18 months being punished financially for trusting the wrong person emotionally. I kept my business. Barely. I lost money. I lost sleep. I lost the version of myself who believed love automatically made people decent. So, when I met Ethan, a year after the divorce was finalized, I thought I was being careful. He was charming, controlled, successful. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, owned his own condo, wore expensive watches without flashing them, and seemed like the kind of man who had built his life with discipline. At first, I admired that. He listened when I talked about work. He remembered small things. He knew how I took my coffee. He looked at me like I was not damaged, just experienced. That mattered to me more than I wanted to admit. We moved quickly. Too quickly. Maybe. But after surviving someone who lied beside me every night, Ethan's steadiness felt like shelter. After a year, he proposed. I said yes before he finished asking. The wedding planning began immediately. Big venue. 200 guests. A designer dress I pretended not to love as much as I did. Flowers. Music. Food. Lighting. Seating charts. Deposits. Ethan had strong opinions about everything. At first, I told myself that was partnership. Later, I understood it was control wearing a nice suit. I paid for much of the wedding, because I wanted to. Because I had rebuilt my life and wanted this new chapter to feel generous, not guarded. Ethan contributed. But he often reminded me that, traditionally, certain things should fall on the bride's side, or be handled according to what looked right. I ignored the small discomfort in my chest. Then, 3 months before the wedding, he brought up the prenup. We were at dinner. Low lights. White tablecloth. The kind of restaurant where people speak softly even when they are breaking your heart. Ethan had been quiet all evening. Finally, he set down his fork and said, "We need to talk about a prenup." I nodded. "Okay. I think that's smart." He blinked. "You do, after what I went through?" "Yes. I understand protecting assets." His shoulders relaxed. "Good. Because I need mine protected." "Of course," I said. "We protect both sides." That was when his face shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. "I want everything separate," he said. "What's mine, stays mine. What's yours, stays yours." "That's fair. And I want it clear that your previous divorce won't affect me financially." I looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means you made choices before that cost you. I don't want those choices touching my life." The restaurant noise seemed to thin around us. "My ex-husband cheated on me," I said slowly. "That wasn't my choice. You chose to marry him." For a moment, I could only stare. Ethan kept going. Softer now. As if softness made cruelty reasonable. "I'm not blaming you. I'm saying you missed things. Reflex. Patterns. I need to protect myself from that kind of judgment. That kind of judgment? My betrayal had become evidence. My survival had become a flaw. We finished dinner with polite silence sitting between us like a third person. A week later, we met with his lawyer. The office was high above the city. All polished wood and clean windows. Ethan sat beside me. Calm and prepared. Too prepared. The document was already drafted. 17 pages. My input had not been requested. The lawyer explained the basics. Separate assets. No commingling. No shared accounts, unless separately documented. If we bought a house after marriage, ownership would be divided based on contribution, not marriage. Ethan would take 67%. I would take 33%. I turned to him. We're getting married. And the house would be split, like a business deal. He didn't flinch. Not everyone gets 50-50, just because they say vows. The lawyer cleared his throat. I kept reading. The wedding expenses I had already paid were classified as gifts, non-recoverable under any future dispute. My divorce was referenced more than once. My ex-husband was not named, but the language was clear enough. Previous marital failure, financial, imprudence, poor judgment, resulting in loss exposure. I felt something inside me go very still. Not angry. Still. That was worse. I looked at Ethan. You put my divorce in here like it's a disease you might catch. He sighed. Cassidy. It's standard protection. No. I said. Standard protection says premarital assets stay separate. This says you think I'm a liability. His lawyer said nothing. Again. The eyes dropped. That was when I signed. Not because I accepted it, because I finally understood it. Ethan smiled afterward. He actually smiled. Relieved. As if my signature proved I was reasonable. Thank you, he said. I know it felt harsh, but we both need protection. I closed the folder. Yes, I said. We do. That evening, I did not go home right away. I went to my own lawyer, the same woman who had handled my divorce. She read the prenup in silence. Lips tightening at page 4. Then page 9. Then page 13. When she finished, she leaned back. This is aggressive. I know. It protects him from imaginary risks, while documenting your past like a character defect. I know. Then why did you sign it? I reached into my bag and pulled out a bank confirmation. Because Ethan thinks $30,000 is sitting in our future house fund. My lawyer glanced down. It isn't. It's in a business-controlled account, under my name. I moved it there months ago. Before we ever discussed the house. Does he know that? He assumed it was joint. Did you tell him it was joint? I told him it was for our future. She studied me carefully. And now I'm moving it back. The transfer took less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes to move $30,000 from the account Ethan believed represented our future back into an account that belonged solely to me. 3 minutes to undo months of assumptions. 3 minutes to test whether he wanted a partner or simply wanted protection. I sat in my lawyer's office watching the confirmation screen appear. Transfer complete. The words looked strangely ordinary. My lawyer folded her hands. Once he notices, there's going to be a fight. I know. You're sure this is what you want? I stared at the confirmation number. No. I admitted. What I wanted was a fiancé who didn't treat my worst experience like evidence against me. She nodded. And, what are you going to do now? I reached into my purse and pulled out a stack of papers. The prenup, every page covered in highlighted sections. Every sentence that referenced my divorce, marked in bright yellow. Every insulting clause, tagged with handwritten notes. Question. Simple ons. Questions Ethan should have asked himself before asking me to marry him. Is this what respect looks like? Why are you marrying someone you clearly don't trust? If my past mistakes define me, what does your behavior say about you? Would you accept this language if the roles were reversed? My lawyer read a few of them and smiled. You're not trying to hurt him. No. What are you trying to do? Make him see himself. That evening I stopped by the condo we shared. The place was empty. Ethan was still at work. The wedding binder sat exactly where he always kept it. On the coffee table, cream-colored leather, filled with seating charts, vendor contracts, flower samples, and dreams. I opened it, placed the prenup on top, added every sticky note. Then I closed the binder carefully. For a moment I stood there looking around the living room. The framed photos, the wedding magazines, the future we had spent a year building. A strange sadness settled over me. Not because I thought I was losing Ethan, because I realized I might never have had him. The version of him I loved suddenly felt incomplete, like a beautiful painting with cracks hidden beneath the surface. I left before he got home. By the time Ethan arrived, I was sitting in my older sister, Lauren's kitchen drinking tea. Lauren knew everything. She had been skeptical about Ethan for months. Not openly, just enough to make me uncomfortable. Now I understood why. She listened while I explained what I had done. Then she asked one question. When was the last time Ethan admitted he was wrong? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Exactly. At shopped opt pay. M. My phone rang. Ethan. I answered. What is this? No greeting. No hello. Just anger wrapped in confusion. What is what? The prenup in the binder. Which part? Your notes. Oh. A pause. You highlighted half the document. Actually, closer to 70%. Cassidy. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. His breathing grew heavier. Why would you write those things? Because I meant them. You think I don't respect you. I think you documented your lack of respect across 17 pages. That's not fair. Neither was blaming me for being cheated on. Silence. Then, that's not what I did. It is exactly what you did. No. Yes. The word landed hard. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Ethan lowered his voice. Where are you? Not home. Come home. No. Cassidy. We need to talk. We are talking. Face to face. Not tonight. His frustration sharpened. You're overreacting. That sentence surprised me. Not because he said it, because he actually believed it. I laughed once. A cold laugh. You put my divorce into a legal document multiple times. It was protective language. You called my life experience poor judgment. It wasn't personal. It was entirely personal. His voice softened. I love you. The words should have mattered. Instead, they felt disconnected from everything else he was saying. Then, why do you speak about me like a financial threat? No answer. Only breathing. I closed my eyes. For the first time since meeting Ethan, I felt emotionally tired. Not hurt. Not angry. Tired. The exhaustion that comes when you finally stop defending yourself against someone determined not to understand. I'm staying away tonight. I said, Cassidy, I need time. You're making this bigger than it is. No. I said quietly. I think I'm finally seeing how big it already was. I ended the call. He called back 4 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Please come home. We can fix this. You're misunderstanding. Let's talk. I read every message. Answered none. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I barely slept. Part of me kept hoping Ethan would suddenly understand, that he would send a message saying, I was wrong. Not a defense. Not an explanation. Not a justification. Just accountability. Instead, my phone remained silent. At 8 o'clock, Lauren opened the front door and froze. He's here. I looked up. What? He's outside. I walked toward the entrance. Ethan stood on the porch. His suit jacket was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely shaken. Lauren folded her arms. She doesn't owe you a conversation. Please, he said. Just one word. Please. I stepped outside. The morning air felt cool against my skin. You have 5 minutes. Ethan nodded immediately. The prenup was wrong. I waited. The wording was wrong. Still waiting. I should never have described your divorce that way. Why did you? His face tightened. Because I was scared. I almost laughed. Fear. The universal excuse. My friend lost everything in her divorce last year. He continued. She kept telling me to protect myself. So you protected yourself by attacking me. That wasn't my intention. But it was the result. He looked away. I pressed forward. Do you know what hurt the most? What? That you never once talked about what happened to me. His eyes lifted. You talked about the money. I stepped closer. You talked about the legal consequences. Closer. You talked about assets. Closer. But you never talked about the betrayal. His expression changed. Slightly. Enough. Because that's what mattered. Ethan. My voice shook. Not the settlement. Not the lawyers. Not the money. The fact that someone I trusted destroyed my life. He swallowed hard. I know. No. I said. You don't. For the first time. He had no response. None. The silence stretched. Then I asked quietly. Did you check the house fund account? His brow furrowed. No. You should. The color left his face instantly. What? You should check it. His hand moved automatically toward his phone. He opened the banking app, watched the screen, and froze. Exactly the way I had frozen when I read the prenup. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then panic. Then anger. The transformation happened in seconds. Where is the money? I moved it. His head snapped up. You what? It was my money. You said it was for our future. It was. Cassidy. Until I realized we apparently don't have one. His face hardened. You did this to punish me. No. Then why? Because you taught me something. His jaw clenched. What? I held his gaze. If we're protecting ourselves, instead of building a partnership, then I should start protecting myself too. For the first time, Ethan looked genuinely afraid. Not of losing money, of losing control. And that fear told me more than any prenup ever could. Ethan stared at me, as though he no longer recognized the woman standing in front of him, for a long moment. Neither of us spoke. The morning traffic moved behind him. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Lauren remained inside the house, deliberately giving us space, while still making sure I wasn't alone. Finally, Ethan shook his head. This isn't you. The words almost made me smile. No. I said quietly. This is exactly me. You're just seeing a version that stopped apologizing. His eyes narrowed. You moved $30,000 because of a prenup. I moved $30,000 because I realized the person I was planning to marry saw me as a risk. You know that's not true. Then why was every page designed to protect you from me? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I had noticed something over the previous 24 hours. Whenever Ethan needed to explain his behavior, he reached for logic. Whenever he needed to explain my behavior, he reached for emotion. His decisions were practical. Mine were reactions. His fears were reasonable. Mine were overreactions. The imbalance suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. Cassidy. Please. He said. Let's just fix this. Fix what? The document. The document isn't the problem. It is? No. I replied. The document is evidence. He looked genuinely confused. That surprised me, because I had finally realized something. Ethan wasn't pretending not to understand. He truly didn't understand. To him, love and protection were opposites. To me, love required trust. Neither of us had noticed that difference until now. I can rewrite everything, he said quickly. I'll call my lawyer today. You'll remove the language, yes. You'll make everything 50-50, yes. You'll take out every reference to my divorce, yes. Why? His answer came too fast. Because that's what you want. I felt my chest tighten. There it was. Again. Not because it was right. Not because he understood. Because it was what I wanted. Because he wanted the conflict to stop. Not because he had actually changed his thinking. I looked at him for several seconds. Then I asked a question. Would you have changed any of it if I hadn't pushed back? His face fell. That was answer enough. Cassidy, no. You don't understand. Then explain it. I was trying to be careful. At my expense. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did. He looked exhausted. So what happens now? I took a deep breath. The truth felt heavier than I expected. I don't know. His eyes widened. What does that mean? It means, I don't know if I should marry you. The words hung between us. Cold. Permanent. Real. For the first time since our engagement, I saw genuine panic in Ethan's face. Not irritation. Not frustration. Fear. You're talking about ending everything. No. Then what are you talking about? Time. His shoulders slumped. How much? I don't know. The wedding is 8 weeks away. I know. We've paid deposits. I know. People have flights booked. I know. Every answer seemed to make him more desperate. Cassidy. Please. I shook my head. I need space. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded once, then slowly walked away. I watched him leave, and for the first time, I felt something strange. Relief. Not because I was happy, because I was finally being honest. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of my life. Not because of Ethan, because of myself. I had spent years blaming my first marriage for my trust issues. Now, I had to ask a harder question. Why had I ignored the warning signs again? I started therapy. Twice a week. The first session was brutal. My therapist asked me a question I couldn't answer. What made Ethan feel safe? I immediately listed his good qualities: responsible, successful, reliable, organized, thoughtful. The therapist listened, then asked, what made him emotionally safe? Silence. The question stayed with me for days. Because the answer wasn't clear, week after week. I began examining the relationship differently. Not through the lens of romance, through the lens of patterns. I remembered how Ethan always took control of vacation planning. How restaurant choices somehow became his choices. How wedding decisions became discussions only until he disagreed. How every compromise seemed to move in one direction. Toward him, none of those moments seemed serious individually. Together, they formed a picture I didn't like. 3 days later, Ethan emailed me a revised prenup. Not texted. Emailed. Formal. Attached as a PDF. I opened it, expecting more of the same. Instead, I found an entirely different document. No references to my divorce. No language about poor judgment. No unequal ownership percentages. No insulting clauses. Just a straightforward agreement designed to protect both parties fairly. My attorney reviewed it. Honestly, she said, this version is reasonable. It was completely reasonable. Exactly what should have existed from the beginning. That should have made me happy. Instead, it made me sad. Because the new document confirmed something important. The first version wasn't an accident. It had been a choice. A choice Ethan willingly made before consequences appeared. I called him that evening. He answered immediately. Cassidy. I read it. Silence. Then hope. So, the new prenup is fair. A long exhale. Thank God. I closed my eyes. There it was again. Relief. Not understanding. Relief. Ethan. Yeah. The prenup isn't the issue anymore. The silence returned instantly. What do you mean? I mean, the document is fixed. Good. But the reason it needed fixing isn't... His voice became cautious. I don't understand. I know. The words slipped out before I could stop them. He sounded hurt. Cassidy. Why did it take losing me? What? Why did it take consequences for you to see the problem? I told you. I was scared. No. My voice remained calm. Fear explains behavior. A pause. It doesn't excuse it. He said nothing. I continued. If I hadn't moved the money, would you have changed the prenup? Silence. If I hadn't left, more silence. If I hadn't forced the issue, nothing. The answer sat between us. Heavy and unavoidable. Finally he spoke. I made a mistake. Yes. I admitted that. Yes. I fixed it. Yes. His frustration surfaced. Then what else do you want? The question hit harder than he intended, because I knew the answer immediately. I wanted you to understand. He fell silent, and in that silence, I realized he still didn't. Not completely. Maybe he never would. After we ended the call, I sat alone in my apartment. The engagement ring rested on the kitchen counter. The wedding invitations had already been printed. The venue was paid. The caterer was scheduled. The photographer had begun planning shots. Everything looked ready, except the marriage. 3 weeks after leaving, I made my decision. Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly, like accepting a truth that had been waiting for me the entire time. That evening, I called Ethan. We need to meet. His voice immediately brightened. Okay. At the coffee shop where we had our first date. A pause, then? Is this about the wedding? I looked at the ring on the counter. Yes. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I was going to say. The coffee shop hadn't changed. The same brick walls, the same worn wooden tables, the same soft music playing through hidden speakers. 3 years earlier, Ethan and I had sat near the window and talked until closing time. We had laughed about terrible first dates, embarrassing childhood stories, and dreams for the future. Back then, everything had felt easy. Back then, I thought honesty was enough. When I arrived, Ethan was already there. Of course he was. He had always hated being late. He stood when he saw me. For a second, I caught a glimpse of the man I had fallen in love with. Nervous, hopeful, trying. The sight hurt more than I expected. Hi, he said quietly. Hi. I sat down across from him. Neither of us touched the menus. Neither of us ordered coffee. The conversation waiting between us was too important for distractions. Ethan studied my face. You've made a decision. It wasn't a question. I nodded. His shoulders tensed immediately. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. I looked around the coffee shop, at the couples talking, at the students studying, at people living ordinary lives. Then I looked back at Ethan, and I finally said the words I had rehearsed 100 times. I'm calling off the wedding. The color drained from his face, not dramatically, slowly, like someone realizing they are watching a door close and cannot stop it. No! His voice barely rose above a whisper. Cassidy, I've thought about this carefully. We can fix it. I know. Then why? The question wasn't angry. That made it harder. It would have been easier if he hated me. Instead, he looked devastated, because for the first time, he understood something real was ending. I took a slow breath. Because I don't think you ever saw me as an equal partner. His eyes widened. That isn't true. It is. No. Yes. The word landed softly, not cruelly, just honestly. You saw someone you needed to manage. That's not fair. You saw someone whose mistakes needed correction. I was trying to protect us. You were trying to protect yourself. The distinction mattered. Maybe it had always mattered. Ethan leaned forward. I changed the prenup. Yes. I apologized. Yes. I admitted I was wrong. Yes. Then why isn't that enough? The pain in his voice almost broke my resolve. Almost, because part of me still loved him. That was the problem. Love wasn't missing. Trust was. Respect was. Safety was. I don't think you understand why it happened in the first place. I said, I do. No. My voice softened. If you understood, you wouldn't keep pointing to the corrected document. He stared at me, confused again. The same confusion that had followed us for weeks. So I tried one final time. The first prenup wasn't just paperwork. He remained silent. It was a reflection of how you viewed me. A pause. You looked at the worst thing that ever happened to me and turned it into evidence against me. Ethan lowered his eyes. I continued. You didn't see a woman who survived betrayal. Another pause. You saw a woman who failed to predict it. The truth hung between us. Heavy. uncomfortable, impossible to escape. For the first time, Ethan didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend himself. He simply sat there, quiet. I almost wished he had fought harder. Instead, he looked exhausted, like someone finally confronting a reflection he didn't recognize. After a while, he asked softly, "So that's it?" I nodded. "Yes." "What happens now?" I reached into my bag. Inside was a folder. Vendor contracts, cancellation, confirmation, deposit summaries. Everything I had already handled. I slid it across the table. "These are the wedding expenses I paid." His eyes moved to the folder. "I've canceled everything I was responsible for." "You already did it?" "Yes." He looked stunned. The reality was finally settling in. There would be no wedding. No first dance. No vows. No honeymoon. No future together. Just paperwork. Refunds. Phone calls. Losses. Consequences. "The venue isn't refundable," he said quietly. "I know. We'll lose money." "I know." His expression twisted. Months earlier, that thought would have terrified me. Now it didn't. Because I had finally learned the difference between a financial loss and an emotional disaster. One hurts your bank account. The other damages your life. I'd rather lose money than spend years in the wrong marriage. I said. The words surprised even me. Because they were true. Ethan stared at the table for a long time. Finally, he looked up. "I love you." The sentence landed with heartbreaking sincerity. No manipulation, no strategy, no agenda, just sadness. And somehow that made everything worse. "I know." I whispered. "Then don't do this." Tears filled his eyes. The sight nearly shattered me. "I wish love was enough." He closed his eyes. And for the first time during our entire relationship, Ethan looked vulnerable. Truly vulnerable. Not defensive. Not controlled. Not calculating. Just hurt. Part of me hated that it had taken this much loss to reach that point. Another part wondered if it was too late. Deep down, I already knew the answer. It was, when I stood to leave, Ethan didn't try to stop me. Maybe he understood. Maybe he was simply tired. I paused beside the table. "Take care of yourself." His eyes remained fixed on the folder. "You too." Then I walked away. And this time, neither of us followed. 6 months later, the wedding exists only as a collection of canceled reservations and unopened gifts. The engagement ended exactly where it should have. In truth, we both lost money. I lost nearly $20,000 in non-refundable deposits. Ethan lost even more. For a while he blamed me. Then he blamed the situation. Eventually, according to mutual friends, he stopped blaming anyone. I hope that's true. He briefly considered legal action regarding some wedding expenses. Multiple attorneys apparently gave him the same answer. Ending an engagement is not a lawsuit. It's a life decision. The matter died quickly. As for Ethan, he's dating again. The relationship moved fast. That doesn't surprise me. Some people run toward commitment because it feels safe. Others run toward it because they are afraid of being alone. I genuinely hope he's happy. For the first time. I mean that, I'm single. Therapy helped. More than I expected. Not because it taught me how to spot controlling behavior, because it taught me why I tolerated it. I had spent years believing my first divorce was proof that I should try harder, compromise more, understand more, forgive more. What I learned instead was simpler. A healthy relationship isn't built by one person constantly proving their worth. It's built by two people choosing trust at the same time. The wedding binder became a story people still ask about. Friends laugh when they hear it. Family members call it clever. Some even call it revenge. They're wrong. It wasn't revenge. It was a mirror. A mirror that forced Ethan to see the language he used, the assumptions he carried, the fears he disguised as practicality, and, unexpectedly, it forced me to see something too. That I had been so determined not to repeat my first marriage, that I ignored warning signs in the second. The binder didn't end the engagement. It revealed the truth. That's different. Today, at 35, I'm not embarrassed that my marriage failed. I'm not ashamed that my engagement ended. Those experiences don't define my judgment. They sharpened it. The real lesson wasn't about prenups. Prenups can be wise. Protection can be wise. The lesson was that love without trust becomes negotiation. Love without respect becomes control. And a partnership built on fear will eventually collapse under the weight of the very thing it's trying to avoid. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't getting married. Sometimes it's walking away before you do.